Good afternoon and welcome to the third in our California 2021 wildfire series under our Roadmap to Recovery program. This is just number 3 of the educational units we've offered. We have also been offering our Q&A sessions, our survivor to survivor forums, but this is our third class for those of you who were impacted by wildfires this year. Thank you for joining us. A little bit about United Policyholders. We're a reputable, established 501c3, not a Johnny-come-lately. We've been bringing this type of support to wildfire-impacted communities for 30 years. We're not for profit, not for sale. We are supported by donations and grants. And we are a consumer advocacy and education organization. Our Team Up, as we call it, consists of our professional staff, our government and nonprofit partners. We have a very important one of those with us today. And then our volunteers, which are people who've been through previous catastrophic loss, people who are consumer-oriented professionals, that help serve as instructors on this type of a class, or that help us answer your questions when you submit them to through email to info@uphelp.org. We run 3 programs. Tonight's program is being brought to you through what we call the Roadmap to Recovery. And then we have 2 other programs, one where we focus on helping people be prepared for disasters and adequately insured, and another one where we try to help solve problems that you may be encountering on your road to recovery that need a legislative fix or that need some sort of higher level fix. And we will talk about that as we go. That's me, little younger and without glasses. One of the founders of the organization. I have been an insurance consumer advocate my whole career. And I do my best to be your voice when there are decisions being made that are going to affect you. And then to run this organization is to make it as useful as possible to you. I'm very happy to be joined today by my friend and our partner, Tony Signorelli. Tony has been, as you can see, high up at the California Department of Insurance for many years. And he oversees the hotline, the consumer assistance hotline that you can call, and also the staff that works with you if you file a complaint with the department and seek their help or request for assistance. And Tony has a very hands-on approach to his job, and a lot of the legal rights that we're going to review with you tonight, Tony has helped to put into place. So Tony, thank you for being with us. We also have our resident treasurer, Sandy Watts. She is on UP's team as our insurance specialist. She has 30 years of experience in insurance claims and claims management. So between Tony and Sandy and myself, you can see that we started when we were very young. And Sandy has a lot of expertise in partial losses. So if we have any partial loss folks and you have questions, Sandy is great to answer those. So thank you, Sandy. Just so that you know, we do have a library that we keep updated for your specific fire, so that if you go on that into that library, you should find up-to-date information on all the laws that are in place. But also, it's a good place to check in from time to time as you go through the process, because we have lots of things that can help you. Sample letters, and of course, information about the next class we'll be offering or the next resource, but lots of good information in that library. A reminder that we're just here to give you general guidance, not legal advice. And Tony is volunteering his time as an educator this evening. So just a few reminders before we get into the meat of what are the rules and what are the remedies when those rules get broken, and what are the how is the insurance process supposed to work and what happens when it doesn't. Again, we call this program the roadmap to recovery because we try to give you signs along the road. And as we say, your insurance is a vehicle to get you back where you were before your loss, but it ain't gonna drive itself. So a lot of what we're here to tell you is how to be proactive in the process. So first, I want to remind you that in our state, we have more regulations and laws to protect you in the post-disaster insurance claim process than any other state. And we have worked very hard to make that the case. So a lot of the regulations and laws that give you rights are things that Tony and myself and Sandy and other people that are in our family have gone to the legislature or helped write because there were problems that other people experienced on their journey that we couldn't fix through negotiation, and we needed stronger laws. So we really, I think, I'm not saying we have it perfect, and unfortunately, laws don't always get followed. But they're there. So our goal tonight is to let you know what all is out there to protect you and guide the way things should be. But the truth is that the adjusters assigned to your claim, they're supposed to know all those rules and regs, but they probably don't. And that's just realistic. Here I am, a lawyer, and I've been doing this for a very long time. And it's hard to keep track of all the rules. But then again, that is their job. An adjuster in California is legally required to know the rules and know the laws. But the reason we remind you of that is because part of our goal is to empower you to know what those rules are, so that if your adjuster doesn't, you can tell them and you can remind them. And then just two more reminders: a full and fair insurance recovery really does require accurate valuations of your losses, plus an understanding of the benefits that are owed in the policy that you have. And using our roadmap to recovery resources really does increase your chances of recovering all the available insurance funds. And if you're like most people, you need every dime to get back on your feet. We talk about speaking up. It's just a sort of saying that we've developed over the years, and it stands for strong as possible, paperwork organized, empowered, assertive but polite. You get more flies with honey. Keeping a claim diary, being organized. Again, knowing the basics, insurance educated, that's what we're here for. Networking with others, that's what our survivor to survivor forums are for, and also whatever chatting you do with other people in your area that you may run into in the supermarket, or friends and family, that kind of sharing information with other people in your situation is really useful. Getting professional help when needed, and that includes going to Tony's agency when you need it. And then the UP stands for unwilling to be shortchanged and proactive. So that is our kind of religion here at UP. Sandy, you want to just go through these three basic rights that the consumer has?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. So, it's important to know that, you have rights, you have duties, and your insurer also has rights and duties. So these are the ones that, these are the things that you're entitled to. And one of the things that your insurer needs to do is they have to thoroughly, timely, and fairly investigate your loss. They have to evaluate it in a timely manner and pay what they're owed. And if they don't owe something, or if they feel something's excluded, they have to explain it to you in writing in California. They also have to, behave reasonably. They can't make unreasonable demands, like they can't ask for, the same information over and over again in a different form, that type of thing. And one of the things, and this is pretty common everywhere, is that if a policy has language that's ambiguous, that it can be read more than one way, then because the insurers, the carriers, drafted the contracts that you were sort of forced to buy, those ambiguities are decided in your favor. So that's one of the issues.
So yeah, and then you can keep going.
Okay, yeah, you have a right to be treated fairly. And so what happens is there's something called the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and because insurance is it's governed by each state. It's not a federally governed commodity. And so because insurance is governed in each state, every state kind of has a different rules. So the National Association of Insurance Commissioners got together and they made a model act that sort of gave the standards for companies to act toward their policyholders, and each state sort of determines whether or not they're going to adopt them. And California has, and there's something called the CCR 2695 is the California Fair Claims Settlement Practices Regulation. So it's a big mouthful, but if you Google it, you'll find a nice link to the Department of Insurance that has it all laid out there. And there's a lot in there, but really the whole point of the regulations are to help guide the insurer into their handling of good faith of your claims, okay, to effectuate prompt, efficient, and equitable settlements. So that's the whole point of it. They have duties, they have things, and we'll get to those, time limits to respond to correspondence, time limits to pay or deny a claim, and they outline, duties. And if they do certain unreasonable things over and over, then that can be construed as what's known as bad faith. So these are all, sort of intended to have a measuring stick to keep them on the straight and narrow. And the important thing is that an insurance company really they can't put their financial interests above your financial interests. They have to treat you, they have to make their decisions weighing both of the interests of both of the parties evenly.
Yeah, thank you. So Tony, you are at the Department of Insurance, and so you're getting communications from consumers all the time, and I would imagine you get a lot of letters where people say, "I think the insurance company is acting in bad faith," but then the insurance company will come back and say, "Well, we asked the consumer for information and they didn't give it to us." So can you talk a little bit about the policyholder's duty? Now we've talked about the insurance company's duty. What is the policyholder's general duty in connection with the claim?
Well, and in general, a policyholder has a duty to act honestly with the insurance company, provide information that's reasonably requested in a timely fashion, and exhibit your property. Allow the adjuster to go on your property to take photographs and evaluate and adjust it, at reasonable times, that's convenient to you, that sort of thing. And you have to cooperate with the insurance company in terms of certain requests, or you can't get in the way of them processing your claim. And so it gets specific as, based on your specific claim, but that's generally how it works. Okay.
So if a consumer is threatening, writes to you right out of the box and throwing around the term bad faith, that's not some magic wand that means that they're necessarily right and the insurance company is wrong. Is that fair to say?
Right. It's a difficult one in the sense that bad faith, in essence, is a civil tort. It's not really a regulatory issue per se, although some of the same issues that we might find where the insurance company did not act in good faith could be used in a so-called bad faith action in civil court. But so we'll look at what the laws in place, which include the statutes in the insurance code, as well as the regulations that Sandy mentioned earlier, and make sure that did they pay the claim on time, did they process the claim on time, did they do all these things, provide the proper notices, and those will lead us to a conclusion as to whether the insurance company handled the claim in good faith.
Yeah, okay. And the only reason I'm talking about this right now is because United Policyholders tries to keep it real for you. And, we know, especially now with social media, that, people can get pretty mad at their insurance companies, and they can throw a lot of sort of emotional words around, and we so understand that. That's, we're here to try to minimize that pain on you, but we also want you to be effective in your negotiations. And so I mention this because I think, some people, they'll sort of hear those terms, bad faith, and they'll think that if they just drop that on the insurance company, that the insurance company will straighten up and fly away. Right. But the reality is that, insurance, this is a process, right? And there's just steps that have to happen. And you, as the policyholder, as the insured, you do need to cooperate as best you can. So, you can't just sit back and say, well, they're being jerks. You have to provide them with information about your claim, as long as what they're asking you for is reasonable. We'll go into a little more detail about that. But the sources of those rights, where I told you California has so many, are in these 4 places. We don't expect you guys to become lawyers. In fact, we hope that you won't need a lawyer. That's part of our goal, is to try to explain things, make it clear, but then give you the tools so that you'll be able to get a fair settlement without having to pay somebody for the protection that you already paid for. But just so that there's a code. It's this big fat book here, the California Insurance Code. There are bulletins that Tony's agency puts out. There are regulations that are laws as well. And then there are the laws that courts put into place when they write decisions. So one of the most important things for you to get through this process in one piece is to understand your policy benefits. And we have already taught an excellent class on that topic. We taught it last month. This is the link so you can watch the video. And Sandy was one of our instructors, and we went through how do you read the policy and figure out what's in there, what it gives you in the way of benefits. So we're not going to go over that too much tonight, but I just really urge you to remember that that's a good kind of basic recording, and you can go back and you can watch it. Or if you just want to look at the PowerPoint from it, you can do that as well from our website. And these are just examples of knowing your rights. Like, knowing your legal rights also includes knowing your rights under the policy. So, having that grasp of your policy, not your neighbors, but your policy, is pretty important in the process. So if you are still struggling to figure out how much coverage you have and the different buckets, and what what kind of formulas may increase those available amounts, I encourage you to rewatch that class. So this is a great example of language in a policy that you might miss, and an adjuster might not even be aware of it. But this language, if it were to be in your policy, Sandy, maybe you want to explain this. I'm pretty sure that this is.
So this is interesting because of one of I think it was one of the Tubbs fire people found this. Someone else actually found it in his policy over a year after the fire. His adjuster didn't know this was in there, and that's sort of because if you have a local adjuster, maybe they haven't handled a lot of disasters before, and this is just a simple small sentence hidden in a policy that basically doubles some coverage. So it's twice the extended limit. So this part of the policy really bailed this guy out. He had some underinsurance issues. And this particular policy, there's 2 areas where it's in the policy. One doubles the extended dwelling coverage, and the other paragraph doubles the code upgrade coverage. So it was really nice to find that in there. So it's a constant reminder. I always go back and read the policies, even though I think I have them memorized sometimes, and I always see something new and learn something new. So it's important to do. It's really, a tough thing to want to read, but it's really important.
Yeah. So in terms of knowing your rights, very important. So Tony, do you want to just explain what this one is about?
Sure. This is a right that's embedded in the standard fire policy, and it basically allows you as the policyholder to ask your insurance company for a certain portion of your claim file. And it's basically all documents that relate to how the insurance company evaluated their claim, all the repair estimates, the appraisals, the scopes of loss, the drawings, et cetera, that pertain to your claim and pertain to how the insurance company valued your claim. And so if you run into a roadblock with your insurance company and they say, oh, we based it off of this estimate, then you ask for a copy of that estimate and you look at it and you get a level of comfort with it. If they refuse to give it to you, you can refer them to this insurance code section. And again, if they ultimately refuse you and you believe that they're violating the law, contact the Department of Insurance. We're happy to look into this and make sure that the insurance company complies with the law and gives you all the documents that you are owed.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example of a right that you have as a California resident that you didn't have in any other state. And it's a really important one, for sure. So on our website, we have a sample section that you can find. And here's an example of a sample letter we've created for you to use to get copies of your claim file. So to see those those estimates that Tony was just referring to. So we're not going to go into the details of all these regs, but we're just going to quickly go through them so that you know that you have them. So by now, hopefully you have a complete copy of your policy, current with all the pages. And if you don't, then you need to write an email is fine, or as long as you have a written a written request, then they, oh dear, sorry about that, little swipe, erroneous swiping there. Hold on. Okay. Back to the PowerPoint. Right. Technology, not my friend right now. Okay, hold on. So sorry. There. We good now? Back to the deck? Okay. 15 days, they've got to give it to you from when, the claim related documents, 30 days, the complete copy of the policy, but by now you should absolutely have it. You have the right to an orderly claim process. The insurer is supposed to respond to written communications within 15 days. They cannot hide the ball. They're supposed to tell you what coverage and benefits are available. They very, very common where there's been a number of homes destroyed in one area, that insurers will bring in adjusters from out of state. With the 2021 fires, I'm sure that was the case in some of the regions. So if within a 6-month period, your insurer assigns a third or 3 or more adjusters, and they have to give you a written status report, and they also have to give you a primary point of contact. And Tony, do you have any comment you want to make about this law?
Well, only that, as you said, I mean, sometimes you'll find that you may have 2 or 3 adjusters in a 3 or 4 month period, and the new adjuster has to play catch up, and then you're starting from scratch again with that new adjuster. And that's really the purpose of this, so that you're not really you're hopefully not starting from scratch, having to retell everything to this adjuster or reprovide documents to this adjuster. They're supposed to be on top of it and be able to hit the ground running, especially when they assign more than 3 within that 6-month period and you get that point of contact.
Yeah. So far, we've been talking about the rules, and we've thrown one remedy out to you, which is to write a good letter to your insurance company. We have that sample asking for, the claim file, but the remedy, if your the adjuster or the insurer is not complying with some of the rules that we've already gone through, is you start by the self-help, right? You start by saying, creating the paper trail, saying, you have not done XYZ, I need you to do that. Give them a chance to do the right thing, be cooperative. If they say, well, we need this from you, then okay. If it's a reasonable request, you give them what they are asking for. But then your next level of getting help generally is going to be to file a complaint or seek assistance from Tony's agency, because that's free. That doesn't cost you any money. Those of you who may have hired a public adjuster, or you may be thinking about it now, that's a perfectly fine way to solve problems, but it costs money. So we're here just talking about the things you can do that don't cost money, right? The remedies that don't cost money. So we're all going to take a little deep breath. And get into some of the more nitty gritty. So choosing who will repair your property or replace. So again, California protects our consumers. Some states, Florida, for example, insurance companies are getting very excited about what they call managed repair programs, where they make it really hard for people to hire the builder that they want. We don't allow that here in California. So this is one of those protections. So you get to pick who's going to do the work, and that goes for a partial and a total. Sandy, you want to hit this one?
Yeah, so your policy, and hopefully you guys have a pretty decent understanding about how your policy is laid out. And the way it works is that you get paid in chunks of money, right? And so the first payments, we call them ACV payments. It stands for actual cash value. Those payments are prescribed also, again, by another statute that's in California that explains how the insurers are to calculate those payments. And one of the things that we should probably point out is that the things that we're talking about here are all for people who've had their loss in 2021. So after the 1st of January 2021, because a lot of things have changed as we have moved through all these different disasters. So last year, the legislature just did change the way they calculate actual cash value payments, and it's made replacement cost of your building less reasonable depreciation. And the statute goes on to say that if your policy says that you get actual cash value up front, and then you get full replacement cost after you repair or replace, then this 36 months is the time limit. It's the first time limit that you have to collect these first benefits. So it gives you a nice amount of time, okay? And so from the date that they pay you that first big chunk of money on anything, on your house or your contents, it's a little bit different on living expenses, but on your house and contents, the first big chunk is the ACV. You have 36 months. Hopefully you won't need more, but if you do need more, there is a provision in that statute that under certain conditions you can ask. You can always ask for more, but under certain conditions, they are required to grant you more, okay? So she's got it in here. Fair depreciation is based on age and condition. It's really well established that labor shouldn't be depreciated. The only thing that should be depreciated is things that wear out, okay? Your roof, paint, carpeting, things like that, and condition. And so different households, things age differently in some households.
We'll go more into that.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
So so we've got that, and I think she already talked about. So also California, and it's a really important one, is that you do have the right to replace your destroyed home by buying instead of rebuilding.
Yeah, so, and we will go into a little bit more detail on all these things. Just another like kind of refresher crash course on insurance speak in terms of how your insurance company is going to pay you and how they're going to value your losses. That you heard Sandy just talk about depreciation, things that wear out, right? Insurance companies generally have baked in to the process, a way of paying you some money and then more money. And the some money is typically what they have calculated as the Craigslist or the used price of your property, both your dwelling and your personal property, the day before the loss. So that some payment that they will do, some SOME, that they will generally do in early on, and hopefully all of you have gotten quite a few payments already by now. That will be a calculation of the depreciated actual cash value of your stuff, right? So that is different from the replacement cost. So just understanding those two things will get you a long way, because it's, you know, when there's math, there's confusion. But also, as we're going to show you, the depreciation process is subjective. It's not like there are these really clear rules on depreciation. So each insurer has their own kind of approach, but whatever they do, it's supposed to be fair. So just so that you can see visually what this is about, you've got the replacement cost is what it would cost to put your home back together or buy a new couch or buy a new clothing. The actual cash value is what somebody would have paid you for those things immediately before the loss, and considering the deduction in value of those things due to wear and tear. So we're going to give you an illustration of that in a minute. But just sort of understanding that, I don't know, Tony, would you say that the majority of requests for assistance that you guys get, would you say a lot of them relate to people's confusion over ACV versus RCV?
Yeah, I'd say that we do get a lot of them, especially at the beginning of the claim process, where the policyholder gets their first payment, and it's confusing as to, is this all I get? What happens next, or how do I get the additional amount? And as you said, and as Sandy said earlier, that first you get your actual cash value payment, and then once you replace or rebuild, you'll get that difference that was left off from the full replacement cost up to your policy limit.
Right. So a lot of our focus is on making sure that you don't leave money on the table. And now that we've gotten to the halfway where we had the little breathing beach scene, you are more than welcome to put questions into the Q&A if you have them. We had one already, but if we're happy to take some more. So very important, you have the right to know how your insurance company calculated depreciation and how they calculated your settlement offer. They can't just say, here's what we're what we're giving you. And if you say, well, how did you calculate that? They don't have the right to say, well, that's for us to know and you find out, kind of thing. But very often that may be the answer that you get. But again, we're here to tell you what your rights are in that way. So again, actual cash value, that is that reduced valuation that insurers typically will pay before they will pay replacement value. Now, some policies only ever pay actual cash value, and some policies pay only actual cash value on something. So knowing what your policy says will help you. But generally these days, most policies pay on a replacement value basis once you have submitted proof that you have actually replaced the item. But until that has happened, until you've reached an agreement with your insurer over what it's going to cost to put the house back and what it's going to cost to replace your stuff, you're only going to get that reduced payout. And so to a certain degree, you can, I'm not saying just like sit there and wait, but but don't freak out if you can avoid that, and just know that depreciation is negotiable. So the more the insurer depreciates, the less you collect up front, but then as long as you go back and replace things and give receipts, then it shouldn't matter, except for that they're sitting on money that you need. So in that way, it's, excessive depreciation is not acceptable, right? Because you need that money to keep moving forward. There's, like I said, there's no official standard for how much an insurer can depreciate. There's some things that they shouldn't depreciate, like antiques, fine art, jewelry, things that aren't subject to breaking down, the studs in behind the walls, that kind of thing. And then you can, if you really want to go to the mat, you ask the insurer to give you a copy of the depreciation schedule and method that they used, if you feel like they're really withholding more than they have the right to. So one tip we want to emphasize is that your insurer has to consider both age and condition, right? They can't just say, oh, this couch is 5 years old, therefore we're depreciating it that way. Because the same couch, if in a house with people who don't have kids, that couch could hold up pretty darn well, especially if it has a plastic cover over it, the way my grandparents always did over their couch. But if if that same couch is in a house with kids and popcorn and all that goes with that, that same couch is going to depreciate more. So it's not just age, it's also condition. So again, this may be kind of details that you just don't want to bother with, but there's money in the details. And a lot of people never go back and collect everything they're owed, because they basically just are like, I want to put this thing behind me. I don't want to deal. But Tony, do you want to explain what we got put into the law here in California on this point?
Yeah, and this relates back to what Sandy spoke about earlier, that you get 36 months to basically rebuild or replace in order to collect that amount that was left off of your initial actual cash value payment. And then you also get extensions from that 36 months for good cause, basically circumstances beyond your control due to construction delays, supply material delays, that sort of thing.
Now, either of you, have you seen policy forms that don't comply with the law, like policy forms that still say 12 months to collect replacement value? Sandy, have you seen that, or Tony?
I've seen some that say 180 days.
Even though the law has changed.
Yeah, but you have to also keep in mind, some of them it's state of emergency, some of them haven't caught up yet. So I have to say that this is one of the issues where it's the easiest to get an extension from an insurer. From my experience,
Yeah.
they usually grant these.
Right.
Without too much of a hassle.
Unlike this one, which is a whole nother thing. So another law that we helped get into place was to give you more realistic time to be able to continue to collect benefits for your temporary rent. Some insurers call it ALE, additional living expense. Some call it loss of use. Some insurers call it temporary rent. It's all the same thing. It's the expenses that you have because you've lost the use of your home. Now, the standard had been 12 months for forever. And then after repeated wildfires in California, when it just kept getting more and more obvious that no one was able to move back into a rebuilt home within 12 months, we got the law changed. So, but it's not automatic to 36. It's automatic to 24. And then if you need another year. However, we have been hearing, not from your crew, not from the 2021 folks, but from people last year, that they're starting to get pressured by one insurance company in particular, State Farm, saying that well, we're going to cut off your ALE benefits if you don't, because you should be moving back in, that sort of thing. Again, that's not allowed. That's illegal. So Tony, what can somebody do in a situation where their insurer is trying to rush them in a way that is not consistent with their rights?
Well, one thing that you could do to kind of alleviate that potentially in the future is, as you run into delays in the process, send an email or a letter to the insurance company to go on record that, hey, there's a delay in getting a contractor. I'm on a waiting list. It's going to take 6 months to even have them start, and put the company on notice. And all of those can add up over time as you get to that 24-month or 12-month period, 12-month extension period, so that you'll be able to show the good cause requirement to get that extension, the 12-month extension, as well as the 6 months extensions beyond that. And if you run into a roadblock, at that point in time, provide information in writing to your insurance company as to why you're still moving forward. Still show that you're moving forward, and it's circumstances beyond your control as to why it's not completed yet. And then if you run into if your company still denies that going forward, come to us, let us take a look at it, and we could see if we can help you with that.
Yeah. So one question we got, I received in advance the first week after my loss. Is this considered the first payment for the 36 months to replace, or is it the first payment for loss, which is currently being processed? That's a perfect example of this person is not sure, where this benefit payment is coming from. So Sandy, you want to speak to that?
Well, I think it's a good question, because there's a whole range of things, advances that they can give you. I've seen advances, I talked to somebody today who got a $3,000 advance for their everything they lost. They lost everything, and they only got $3,000. I've seen people who have gotten their policy coverage A limit as an advance. So it's all over the board. To be safe, I would, if it's a substantial, so if it's, and you also have to differentiate between additional living expense advances, because those are different. And there's a new law that says that they have to give you, I think, 4 months of additional living expenses advance. Those don't count toward the 36 months of collecting your replacement cost benefits. It's a little confusing because there's 36 months for ALE, there's 36 months for the replacement cost benefits. But if you got a building or contents advance that was substantial, like a big portion of your policy limit, then I would err on the safe side and count that as your first ACV payment and start counting your 36 months from then, because then you're not gonna, you're gonna have less of a chance to get yourself into a jam. That's that's what I would recommend.
Yep. Anything to add there, Tony?
Well, the only thing I would add is, if you get a big payment up front on your structure, and if you are going to consider it your actual cash value payment, you need to be comfortable that that's an appropriate amount. So you don't want to be shortchanged on that actual cash value payment. So
Right.
if you think it's underpaying your actual cash value of your structure, then you should go back to the company and let them know that you do not consider this your full actual cash value payment, and maybe provide support as to why you believe it's underpaid. And that will also, to the degree that's true, that will also not keep the clock from starting to tick until they've actually paid the actual cash value payment.
Yeah, good. Okay, we will get to the other questions as we go here. So combining coverages, another right that you have in California that other people in other states don't have, which is helps because so many people who lose their homes in a wildfire or have their homes destroyed, partially destroyed, find themselves underinsured. Underinsurance is one of the biggest challenges for wildfire impacted households. It's something that we work really hard to help people solve. It's a tough one. So one thing that can help is being able to use whatever coverage you had for other structures towards the cost of replacing your main dwelling. So this is a relatively new, quite new actually, law that your adjuster may not know about. So just for those of you who may be thinking that you're underinsured, just make sure that you include in the calculation of the benefits that are available to you, whatever your other structures coverage is or was. So resolving disputes over replacement costs. So we do have a question about this. So we'll tackle that. So these are the rules in California for how the insurer is supposed to estimate your loss and what they owe you. They're supposed to give you a copy of their calculations. Their dwelling replacement or repair estimate is supposed to be accurate to the costs in the region for labor and materials. If the claimant feels, and this is a super common scenario, that the adjuster has underestimated, then there are three options here. So, and I'm going to ask Sandy to go to explain those through three options, and just to mention that these days most adjusters working for insurance companies, including independent adjusters, which are just adjusters for hire. They only work for insurance companies. It's sort of, the word independent is kind of not 100% accurate because you cannot hire one of them. You can hire a public adjuster, but only an insurance company can hire an independent adjuster, generally speaking. So Sandy, what's the insurer's option if you say the necessary repairs are more than what the insurance company is estimating?
We're going to do a whole workshop on this, and if you go look in our past events, we have something called Scoop on Scope that goes through this in a lot of detail because it's pretty complex. There's a lot to it. But the first thing that I would urge you all to do, and I know it's really hard, is to go through their estimate and try to correct everything that you can that you notice is wrong in their estimate. So that's the first thing that needs to be done. You want to be able to, when you get a contractor's estimate, to compare apples to apples. I see a question from Stan over
The deck.
Yeah, the decking, and he lost a deck, and he's, it's made of redwood and composite, and they're replacing it with pine. Well, the first thing that I tell people to do is make a copy of your estimate, take your trusty red pen, cross out their dimensions that are wrong. So check like the measurements if you can. Do the best you can. Don't stress over. Don't try to do foundations and framing and things like that. But if they've got carpeting in a room that you had hardwood in, or they've got pine and you had redwood, mark it up, send it in with an email saying, this is incorrect, and try to get it as close as you can, and keep doing it until they get it right. Because if you need to go get a contractor's estimate, you want to be able to compare apples for apples, the same estimate. So how much does this redwood and composite deck cost in their land versus the reality land? So if correcting the estimate doesn't bring it up to a price that allows you to do the work that you need to do to replace what you had, then you can get a contractor to provide you an estimate. When you do that and send it to the insurer, which I would encourage you, if there's a big difference, to do sooner than later, there are three things, and only three things, that can happen at that point. And the first is they can pay the difference. They can say, okay, we're going to pay your estimate, and they can pay you the difference of theirs. The second one is interesting because it is at your, down a little bit lower, at your request, and only at your request. They have to provide you with a name of at least one contractor who can do those repairs for the amount of their written estimate. So I've seen a few cases where, a person has looked and looked and they can't find anybody. You can write to your insurance company and say, hey, I can't find anyone Send me the name of somebody who can do this work for your price, and they need to do it.
Okay. So for Stan with his question about that he lost a major portion of his upper and lower deck. The adjuster used treated pine as a cost instead of the redwood that he had and the composite that he had. And so there's a disagreement. So pretty much what Sandy said, that's where you need to be the squeaky wheel that that communicates clearly and requires them to make an adjustment to their scope. And I'll give you information before we wrap up on the upcoming workshop that Sandy was referring to. So, so you are entitled to replace your dwelling under California law in 4 different ways. You can rebuild at the current location as was. You could rebuild a different home at the current location. You can rebuild at a new location, or you can buy an already built home in a new location. And this is the section of the California Insurance Code that tells you what your rights are. Now, this can get complicated for a couple reasons. What we talk about in insurance is the measure of indemnity, which is just a fancy way of saying what the insurance company owes you, is based on replacing the asset that they insured that is now gone, right? So 99% of the people that we have encountered over the last 3 years have not wanted to put back the exact same house for lots of reasons. They either wanted a bigger house or a smaller house, or they couldn't put back the same exact house because, the guy who designed it doesn't, is passed away or whatever. There's lots of, and they don't have the plans, lots of reasons. But still, the best way to come to an agreement with your insurance company is to come to an agreement on that theoretical, hypothetical cost as close as possible to what it would cost if you put that house back. Now, most people today, their adjuster is going to give them an offer. It's going to be based on Xactimate, this computer generated estimate. The adjuster is going to say, this is what we calculate. And then hopefully you're participating in our classes, and you're going to be an empowered and united policyholder, and you're going to say, well, maybe that's right, but I'm going to trust, but I'm going to verify. I'm going to make sure that that is accurate, because you are entitled to what a builder would charge, not a computer that doesn't build houses. So Xactimate is a tool that insurers have developed, and it's very convenient for them, but it's not always accurate for you. So getting to that original dwelling replacement cost of like what they owe you, that measure of indemnity, is one of the most important things you can do to try to just get through this process without losing any more hair than you may have already lost just from having gone through the experience. So that's the code section that gives you those rights. We have worked very hard in California to have the rules be fair so that you don't leave money on the table just because you don't want to or can't rebuild the exact same house that you lost. So, and one of those laws has to do with buying a replacement home. So, Tony, do you want to just walk us through the basics for if you do not want to rebuild, but you want to buy? How do you approach getting a fair settlement?
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, Amy, and which I'd like to emphasize, is that the amount you're owed by your insurance company is based on rebuilding the home that you lost. Regardless of what option you choose afterwards, that's the math that needs to take place. So what that math includes is the full cost to replace your home up to your policy limits, plus any extended costs, any extended replacement cost coverage you might have, plus any building code upgrade you might have, and other coverages. So you pretend that you're going to rebuild the same exact house. All the money the insurance company would owe you for rebuilding that house is available to you to choose one of the other options: rebuilding a different house, buying a new home on a new lot, or rebuilding on a new lot.
Yep. And this has been a battle royale, I can tell you all, because again, California, we protect consumers, in other states, you don't have the rights that you have here, which again means that some of the adjusters you may be dealing with don't know, and have never worked on a claim before where the person has the right to buy a replacement home and not leave money on the table. But that's our goal, so that you don't leave money on the table when you decide how you want to replace your home. This was a big fight we had over land value, but we settled it, and no one feels lucky to lose a home ever. But the good news about losing your home in 2021 is that the law now gives you a very clear right to take all the money your insurer would have had to pay to put your house back the way it was. And and with 10% of building code upgrades is required now by California law, coverage for improvements that you might have to make to the plumbing or electrical, because the codes are different from how they were when you built the house. So that's an extra bucket of coverage. So your basic coverage, your some code upgrade coverage, whatever your policy says, at a minimum, it's got to be 10% of the insurance on your dwelling. Plus, if you have extensions, as Tony mentioned, of coverage, all of that she needs to go into a bucket that's available to you, and the insurer cannot play the game that they have been playing of saying, well, you can take all that money and you can buy a house, but we're going to deduct from what we pay you an amount for the land under the house you're buying. That's over. That fight is done. We won that fight in California. So there's no land value deductions if you're replacing by buying, and that makes it really clean. All right, so Tony, you want to just go quickly through these additional protections?
Sure. The first one is, whenever there's a deadline coming up, the insurance company has to give you at least 60 days notice of what's happening, and whether it's to file a lawsuit, to do whatever time limit that might be in your policy. They have to give you at least 60 days notice before the expiration of that. And then also, by filing a complaint with the Department of Insurance, they can't hold that against you. They can't retaliate, pay you less, cancel you, that sort of thing, just because you file a complaint with the department. We don't see that happen very often, and typically the insurance companies are comfortable with taking a complaint in and following it through and telling us what they did or didn't do. We don't always agree with them on what they did, but they're not going to hold it against you for filing that complaint.
Yeah.
And then also, they can't try to settle your claim, try and lowball you and hope that you take it. If they have reasonable evidence in their claim and they're adjusting that you're owed a certain amount of money, they can't undercut that just to see if you'll bite and see if you'll take it and walk away. That would be an unfair claims practice that we would take issue with.
Yeah. So similarly, they cannot discriminate against two people who are insured with farmers. They have to treat both of their customers the same. And so that's another reason why it's great to talk to your neighbors and other people that have been affected, just to make sure that you're all being treated the same. So just a couple more things. The insurer is they're not supposed to hide the ball. They're supposed to tell you all the benefits, coverage, time limits, and everything that's in the policy. They're not allowed to discriminate against you by the color of your skin, your religion, sexual orientation, all those things. So before we get to the common hotspots, let's answer the question from one of the folks. Are there any health? This is right to you, Sandy. Are there any health issues with smoke damage to a residence, primarily from burnt fir trees? Or is it just the unpleasant smell? For example, would it be safer to replace contents for a resident with respiratory problems rather than trying to clean? That's a very common situation for people, clean or replace.
And the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
It really does depend on the person, their sensitivity, the contents, their cleanability, the level of smoke. It's a really individual, really tricky. I would ask for testing, testing of the contents to see what's there. If you do have health issues, talk to your doctor. See if you can get a doctor to write maybe a letter that talks about if you're sensitive to exposures to certain things, do that. And really, but I can't stress more that work with your insurance company. I talked to a woman the other day who, sort of made a unilateral decision to take all her drywall out and throw all her contents away. And there was no testing. So you need to be able to, verify that your stuff is really permanently damaged. So you might need help. Depends on how,
And as Sandy said, getting an independent, like getting a doctor's note about your respiratory condition can help as well, because insurers or adjusters are trained to kind of go on the documentation. So, giving your insurer a letter from an objective person saying, yeah, this person is not making it up, they actually do have respiratory issues.
Right.
So these are some of that can help you. So these are some of the common hotspots. The adjuster thinks that you're trying to pad or build, your inventory, or to try to build bigger and better. Sticking to the facts is generally you're gonna get everything that you're entitled to, as long as, and it's important to stay credible. So just sticking to, like I said, the facts of like what, if you think that that their exactament estimate is low, or they're making a lowball offer, then you do need to work on getting some evidence to back up what your view, that you can't just say they're lowballing me. You've got to show, you got to get some proof to show it. Very common, these scope and valuation disputes, and whose numbers are right. The ACV, the fights over unfair depreciation, very common. We've been talking about this all evening. Out-of-state adjusters not knowing about the rules we have in California. Those are some of the common hotspots that we see. On partial losses, we see lots of folks have trouble, just like that last question, figuring out, okay, what actually happened to my property as a result of this fire, and what needs to be done to restore my house if it wasn't totally destroyed. That we have a tremendous amount of really good digestible information for partial loss, standing home folks. Sandy has taught numerous workshops. I've taught numerous workshops. Lots of good information on our website on the nuts and bolts of getting a fair settlement on a partial loss. On total loss claims, underinsurance, who's to blame? Whose fault is it that the property was underinsured? How much detail the insurer is requiring on your contents inventory? Lots of pain around that for some people. Lots of sources of help from United policyholders that you can access. And then getting that valuation on that hypothetical, it's a project, it's sort of a made up project, no one's actually going to do it, but you need to price it. That's a rub for a lot of folks, is I'm not going to put this house back the way it was, but that's what my insurance company owes me. So how do I figure that out? The insurers are using Exactament. On our end, we have real life builders. You can talk to a real life builder who, if you can get to one that's good and local and will help you. You can take one of our classes. You can go to scoop on scope, navigating your dwelling claim, learn how to do it yourself and sort of push back, get them to fix their exactament estimate, or you can pay somebody to actually do a recreation estimate of what it would cost if a builder were to do that project, that recreate that original house. So those are the three options that are available to you. Underinsurance, again, we're not going to go into detail on this, but just to let you all know, 2/3 of people who lose their homes in wildfires are underinsured. Very painful, very challenging. Some people are able to remedy it, almost always behind closed doors, almost always in confidential negotiations, sometimes through a mediation, which the California Department of Insurance offers. You can do a mediation through the department free of charge. Great first step if you have an underinsurance problem and you don't necessarily want to go to the mat with a lawyer, or you cannot find a lawyer who's willing to go to the mat for you. So lots of information on our website about solving that problem, that remedying that problem. Remedy, the ultimate remedy, if the Department of Insurance hasn't been able to help you and you haven't been able to help yourself by using all of our resources free of charge, hiring an attorney. We have a professional find help directory to find some of the folks, guys and gals in California, that this is kind of what they do. They represent policyholders. They don't work for insurance companies. They work for you. But this is pretty early for you to even be thinking about that. In my opinion, on a claim dispute, unless you've got a major problem with the way that the contract was written, the way, there's a huge mistake in the square footage and the insurance company won't fix it, or if they're telling you that you're not covered because you're not properly named on the policy, that kind of thing, that would definitely be a matter to consult with an attorney. But if you are still in the adjusting phase, then I highly recommend that you continue to use self-help. You use the Department of Insurance. We're not going to get into that. You give your insurance company a chance to do the right thing, but don't be a pushover, which is sort of a solid rule that we have. These are just reminders about the how you can communicate effectively and be that squeaky wheel that gets paid. Just reminding you that you think about your insurance claim as a business negotiation, and the better your documentation, the better your proof, the more reasonable your asks, the more likely you are to get what you want. And the better your paper trail, generally the better your experience. Even though it's not sort of natural for most of us to every time you have a conversation with somebody to write it down and spit it right back to them. But that's kind of what we recommend, is just to be that specific and saying, okay, we just had this conversation. You told me that you'll be getting me an offer within 2 weeks, or you're going to get me that report within 2 weeks. Put that in writing so that you have a nice, clean paper trail that confirms that you've been cooperating and your insurer has not been. We recommend you send one last letter before you file a complaint with the Department of Insurance, which is called an RFA, request for assistance, because and in that last letter, we suggest that you recap all the things that are outstanding. We're still waiting for this, and you said you were going to deliver that, or we asked you a question and we need that answer, and you recap it in one short, concise document so that if you do go to the department, they know what's going on without having to dig through a whole complicated back and forth. And we do have a couple more questions we're going to get to. This is just a real sort of basic overview of the levels of authority at a typical insurance company. We talked about that. We gave you this the link to the samples. This is just a good reminder I like to share with people, that we really understand, that we're talking jargon here. We try to simplify it. And when we say, politely assertive and you get more flies with honey, those things are easy to say, but they can be very hard to live when you are in a situation like all of you are in. But we do want to try to remind you, because we are rooting for you. We want you to succeed and get through this process with the least amount of extra pain, and so that you can get back on with your life, and get a roof over your head again. The loss of a home is deeply emotional, and emotion is the enemy of a good business deal. So when dealing with an insurance company, the more you resist making emotional decisions, the better it's going to turn out. Don't let the insurer profit off your emotions. So those are the words from one of our volunteers who navigated the loss of a home. And a lot of the wisdom that you'll find in our website and in our programs comes from people who've been there, done that. Excuse me. And these are some of the publications that you can check. This is the CDI's toll-free number, and then their website. So let's get to these questions, and then we'll just tell you what we've got going on coming up. Question about debris removal. I've read that the state will take our debris removal up to the actual cost. How do we know what the actual cost is? It may be better for me to hire a contractor to remove the debris. So let's have Tony hit that first, and then Sandy add anything that you'd like.
Well, Amy, first, it could be a little bit different in each county, and also depending on whether there's been a state declaration as well as a federal FEMA declaration.
He's in the Sales Canyon area. I'm not sure where that is. Sales Canyon.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I wouldn't know offhand which declarations apply.
Anyway, Jack, your community may or may not have Caldor Fire, may or may not have coordinated debris removal. Back to you, Tony.
Yeah, and if they have a coordinated debris removal program that's backed by the FEMA and a federal declaration, then there's a significant benefit to the policyholder in going through that program, because the way that program generally works is that the county will only, after they've removed the debris, even if the invoice is $100,000 or whatever amount it is, your only obligation is going to be, if you have the, let's say 5% coverage for debris removal from your policy limit, that sort of specific coverage, they're only going to take that 5% of the structure limit, 5% of the contents limit, and that's the additional amount of coverage that you get. And they're not going to eat into your structure, your main structure coverage or your main contents coverage. And so there's a benefit in going through the consolidated debris removal program if it's a FEMA-backed federal program. If it's not, then it's going to be a little bit different, and it's going to be really, we would need to understand what your county is going to do and obligate you for, as to whether it'd be more beneficial to go through the consolidated program or through a private program.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Jack, like for folks in the Sonoma-Napa area, they didn't get their bills for the coordinated debris removal until like a couple of years after the fire. But the good news for them was that their county said, we're not billing you for any, we're not going to come after you for any of the costs of the coordinated debris removal above your policy limit. But again, that sort of goes to like what what the options are that are being presented to you by your locality. Anything to add there, Sandy?
No, just that, it's hard because each county negotiates their own deal with Cal OES and FEMA.
Right.
So I would go to your right of entry form. The contract that you signed should specify what you would owe them.
Yeah, and we actually have a publication on this on our website that you can search. If you put debris removal in the search box, we have a sample of a right of entry form that where somebody would, El Dorado County. So where, yeah, I would go to I'd go to your local official. Hopefully they have, the county has already
Yeah.
some sort of FAQ document up on their website that would answer. So Sandy, we have a question right up your alley. We purchased a fifth wheel and moved it on the property. State Farm told us they'll pay our ALE until the fifth wheel is paid for, and then the ALE stops. The adjuster said to pay longer would be double dipping. Does this sound fair?
How long do you want to live in a fifth wheel?
Well,
I mean, that's my question. So, it's a tough one. So State Farm, the policies that up until now had ALE was actual cost incurred. So you didn't have a cap. So unless you want to live in a fifth wheel, there's no reason for you to live in a fifth wheel. Some people want to stay on the property. I understand that. I also talked to a lot of people from Paradise who got sick of staying in a fifth wheel after a year, 2 years. And if they cut you off, it's harder to get it reinstated. So this question pains me because to me, like renting a fifth wheel and making it temporary, it really depends. And in the fifth wheel until your home is rebuilt, then okay. They're saving a ton of money by doing that. And I don't know how much your fifth wheel costs, but there's a lot, there's a lot of things that go into that.
Tony, you have something to add here. So they purchased the fifth wheel, moved it onto the property. The State Farm saying they'll only pay until it's paid off.
Yeah, I mean, the good news when people do that, and some of them feel that that's what they want to be close to their property, et cetera. At the end of that process, they do get to keep the fifth wheel. And so they do have an asset that's left over from this process. I would add, though, that the cost of your living arrangement shouldn't be the only cost you incur that's eligible for additional living expenses. It could be the other costs involved. You don't have, let's say you don't have a laundry or things like that. You need to go to the laundromat. There could be other costs that you could consider in addition to the cost of that fifth wheel that would extend beyond after that fifth wheel is paid off.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is you can sell if the answer to the question Sandy asked, like how long do you want to live in it? If the answer is not long, not until I figure out how to replace or finish rebuilding or whatever it is you're doing, you could sell it, and then again, then you're sort of back to okay, now you have to pay for us to rent a more comfortable place that was more equivalent to what we had.
So remember that you are owed the increased cost to maintain your standard of living. So without knowing if they're just set on living in this fifth wheel on their property, I find that sometimes it's not explained that it's the increased cost to maintain your standard of living. So if you lived in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, if the cost to rent one of those that's similar to what you lived in was, say, $3,000 a month, how much was the fifth wheel? I think it's really important to know, because if your fifth wheel, if you got a really good deal on it and it cost you 10 grand, well, then I'd think long and hard about the situation, because you're really getting shortchanged. That would be, 3.5 months.
In any scenario, though, I would still get, as best you can, an estimate of what it would cost to rent a place equivalent to what you had, even if there isn't one available right there that that realistically you could move into. And that way you can say, well, this is less than our standard of living. Living in this fifth wheel is less than our standard, and there's some, negotiate some kind of a dollar figure there, because it doesn't feel fair to me that they would cut.
No, it doesn't. But and if you get sick of it, maybe you could say, and maybe try to arrange this in advance. If it goes on and on, you could say, okay, well, we'll sell it if we want to move into a house, and then we'll use the money we got from the sale of it until it runs out, and then you pick it up again,
Right.
but good luck, at that
Yeah.
point. I hate to say it, it's much
Yeah.
harder to reinstate it than it is to keep going.
Yeah. All right. So we've had a great session. This is going to be recorded. You'll be able to go back and watch if you forgot. What did she say my rights were? Okay, there it is. But also, if you want to go back and see like our recovery orientation, where we sort of went through the whole process, and had some like people from FEMA on there to talk about their process for individual assistance and SBA loans. You can watch that. You can also go back and watch the workshop on how to read and understand your policy. And then coming up, we have navigating the dwelling portion of your claim, which is also called Scoop on Scope. So Sandy will be doing her magic there. And then we will have another one of our survivor to survivor forums the same night if you want to really marathon it. And then coming up, we'll have a Q&A on November 30th, where you can ask more questions and get more answers. So that is our program for this evening. Really appreciate those of you who are able to dial in. If you have friends and neighbors that may not be aware of the free help that our consumer organization is offering and all the information that you can get from our website, from these webinars. It's all free. There's nothing like us anywhere else. United Policyholders is a unique resource. We're very blessed to have such a good relationship with Tony Signorelli and his agency, and to have Sandy on our team, somebody who has been adjusting claims her whole career. So again, we're here to be helpful to you. We're not selling anything other than the goodwill that we want to send your way, and the nuts and bolts guidance that we're offering you free of charge. Thanks to the support that we get. And tonight's program is supported by the Rural County Representatives of California. And they, so, that's your counties wanting you to get good information so that you can get back on your feet. So with that, I wish you a safe and healthy evening. And please do continue to take advantage of our free resources. I think we did get all the questions answered. We did. So I wish you all a very pleasant evening.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.